Hello guys, this is Modest Major here, bringing you some commentary over some Halo 5 gameplay. It's taken place on the map Mercy, obviously Haven being one of my favourite maps from Halo 4, if not my favourite. It's nice to be able to come back onto it and play it again. Obviously the dimensions work a little bit differently, the art design is very, very different, which, I don't know, I'm someone who I think, like, the way a map looks can actually affect the way that I play. It can make me more aggressive, more passive, depending on, you know, how bright or how dark. I find on darker maps, I usually try and play a little bit more stealthily, just because subconsciously it has an impact of how I'm thinking. I don't know if you guys feel like that or if you just think I'm being crazy. Probably the latter, but that's perfectly fine too. Today I wanted to talk about the idea of games, of developers, and how they can stagnate or maybe even have some sort of a rebirth. For a while, I kind of was of the opinion that if a developer had screwed up royally and they produced one of the worst games, maybe two of the worst games in a series, you know, two is just a final nail in the coffin, really. If you produce two really, really negative games in a row, let's say like Call of Duty, for example, you know, personally, from my opinion, I think a developer like Sledgehammer, who made Call of Duty Infinite Warfare and made Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, I want to say, those two games were not necessarily my cup of tea. And I believe it was the Sledgehammer developers that brought you both of those two packages. And they both have the same kind of feel. They both kind of, to me, put the game in a really, really bad light. They reduce a lot of the fundamentals that Call of Duty are known for. A lot of the aspects of the gameplay that I actually fell in love with it, because back when Call of Duty 4 was first around, and even in the early days of Modern Warfare 2, a lot of the emphasis was around positioning, around, you know, gun skill in a one-on-one situation. Obviously, nowhere near to the extent that Halo was, but definitely positioning was a really vital aspect of the gameplay, and then plus the genre as well, the aesthetic. Call of Duty had really branded itself in a strong way and set itself apart. And I actually loved that aspect of Call of Duty, and it kept me coming back. It was something very different to Halo, and when I was annoyed with the way that I was playing in Halo and salty that I just wasn't living up to my potential, Call of Duty was the game that I would go to. Because it was like a tiny step down, but it was still a little bit difficult, and you could still kind of outplay people. And now we fast forward to now, and the games that Sledgehammer have been putting out have not necessarily been my cup of tea. And then we see a series like Nintendo's Zelda, for example. Now, I personally, when it comes to Nintendo, I've seen Nintendo be on what I would call a decline since the beginning of the Wii, all the way up until the later stages of the Wii U's life cycle. I personally was starting to come to the conclusion that Nintendo weren't going to be able to put out a game that I was excited for anymore. I really did not like the later Super Mario games. Super Mario World, for example, New Super Mario Bros. I thought they were a really vanilla, dumbed-down version of the Mario formula that I had come to love over the years. You know, Super Mario 64 was a really inventive, creative game. It gave the player a lot of agency. You could kind of just, if you could learn the movement abilities at your disposal and learn how to use the environment in the most creative way possible, you could do a lot in that game. You could really push forward, you know, through the game skillfully and expertly, and it was up to you how you were going to do it. It was a lot more freeform, and as the games went on, they became a lot more linear. There was a lot less freedom of movement, of expression, and it just became kind of a soulless title to me. Even the later parts of Super Mario Galaxy 2 felt a little bit more like that. Obviously, not to the same extent as New Super Mario Bros., but I don't know how much you guys have kept up with the Mario series, but personally, the New Super Mario Bros. And New Super Mario Bros. World on Wii U were not my scene. In fact, 99.9% of the games on Wii U were not my scene, and that 0.01% of games that I did like happened to be Breath of the Wild, which was also on Switch. Switch was the console that I got it for, and I am of the opinion that Nintendo have really revived what made Nintendo special, or a lot of what made Nintendo special in their game Breath of the Wild. I think they took a lot of risks. I think they gave the player a lot of choices and a lot of freedom. And I think a lot of more modern games, we see the burden of making the game accessible be brought put forward to the developers. It's on the developers to make you want to get into that game, and as a result, they try and make it, you know, more hand-holdy at the beginning. They try and make the tutorials, you know, really easy to follow, easy to pick up, and they don't want to scare you off from the game. Whereas Breath of the Wild, Zelda Breath of the Wild is just like, here's a massive open expanse of land. You know, once you get past the first 10-minute tutorial session, that's the only pretty much tutorial in the game. You get past that, and then it's just up to you where you want to go, what you want to do, how you want to do it. And there are a lot of tough enemies, there are a lot of tough experiences, and it's on you to be able to figure you out. You know, Nintendo aren't saying, oh, here you go, we're going to try and make this as easy as possible. We want you to have a gentle time, we want you to have a nice time. They're saying, this is your world, if you think you can combat it, you go ahead. If you're going to get destroyed and you're going to get embarrassed, well, that's on you. You know, that's your fault. You know, you need to learn the game systems, you need to learn the way in which the world interacts with the player, and if you can, great, then you're going to get the most out of that game. And I love that Nintendo have done this. I love how creative they've been. I love that they weren't afraid to take risks, and that they've gone the extra mile in ensuring that the player has the most diverse experience possible. And this was something that I just never expected from Nintendo. To be honest, when Nintendo went down the rabbit hole of casual-friendly gaming, of dumbing it down for the masses, in my opinion, I never thought they were going to go back. I never thought they were going to change their aspect. And basically, the topic of this video, the overall overarching topic and how I want to apply this to Halo, is that I think if you're sick of the way Halo is right now, or you're sick of the way Halo was, or you're sick of, you know, whatever aspect, I think that any series can turn around its luck given the right set of opportunities. And I wasn't a believer in this theory up until I saw this Breath of the Wild, and up until I saw that a developer went back to its roots and went back to what it stood for. Now, I'm not the biggest Halo 5 hater in the world. I actually enjoy a lot of aspects of Halo 5 and don't think they should remove everything from the game, period. I'm not like one of these people who go onto forums and say, everything about Halo 5 is garbage, and if you disagree, you can go back to Halo Reach, you casual piece of trash. I'm not that guy. Well, maybe a little bit. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not that guy. But, I can see that Halo isn't necessarily on top right now, and I can see that Halo isn't necessarily, you know, the glory game that it was back in the day. It's still doing really well, and I think the esports scene that they're pushing for is actually going quite well at the moment, and they're getting respectable viewerships. You know, they're not as good as I would like them to be, and they're nowhere near touching CSGO and League of Legends, but they at least have the right mentality when it comes to branding their game and promoting their game, and the updates that they're doing for the game are a lot stronger than they once were. And the point that I want to get across is that I honestly, genuinely think that if the developers have talent, which I'm sure you guys can agree that 343 to some extent have talent when it comes to designing the engines, when it comes to making the gameplay feel clean. I mean, when Halo 4 first came out, I thought that the gunplay, the feel of the gunplay and the feel of the engine was one of the nicest feeling Halo engines. It probably is my favorite Halo engine, period. Like, just the way in which you interact with your weapons and the way in which the gun sounds are. And the animations. I do think 343 are an extremely talented development team, and I do think as a result that they can push in the right direction and give gamers a more, you know, like, concentrate more on a hardcore core Halo experience. Maybe take a bit from traditional, maybe take a bit from modern, and they can bring something that's difficult, that if you put your time into it, you can make the most out of it, and it can give us, they can continue giving us packages like a Halo 3, like a Halo 2, and, you know, build off of what Halo 5 has done and give us something stronger and maybe turn around their luck in terms of becoming one of the biggest shooters on the market. You know, you even see Call of Duty right now going back to the World War game, because that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to step away from what has, you know, pushed away some of their consumers in changing the formula, in bringing something that didn't identify with the main Call of Duty formula. They're trying to say, you know what, screw that, we'll go back to World War, we're going to do this basic. And who knows, maybe Call of Duty could take off again. Maybe Call of Duty could be one of the top shooters on the market if they play their cards right. Obviously, I'm more so rooting for Halo from a very biased standpoint, and I'm hoping that Halo can capture what's so great about Halo. I don't necessarily think that means doing everything traditionalist and doing everything, you know, it's basically a Halo 3 copy. That's not what I'm asking for. But I'm asking for something that challenges the player, that brings something fresh to the player, whilst also retaining the core identity of what made Halo great in the first place. Anyway, I've been Modest Major. Hope you guys enjoyed this commentary. Cheers for watching. Peace out.